The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime sparkled with light from 100 different suns. Inside the Great Hall, creatures from across the galaxy sat in their designated seats. Some floated in tanks filled with glowing liquid. Others stood on legs that looked like tree branches. A few appeared to be made entirely of living metal. Ambassador Veltak stepped forward to the center platform. His body looked like a walking diamond, reflecting rainbow colors as he moved. The universal translator attached to his throat hummed softly as it prepared to convert his thoughts into words every species could understand. Friends from all corners of space, Veltak began, his voice echoing through the chamber. Today we discuss a most unusual discovery. A new species has learned to travel between the stars. They call themselves humans. Excited whispers filled the air. New species were always interesting, but rarely did they develop space travel so quickly after first contact with the galactic community. What makes them special? Asked THYSS, whose body flickered like a candle flame. Her people, the ethereals, communicated through changes in light and color. Veltak touched the control pad, and images appeared in the air above them. The picture showed a blue-green planet covered with swirling white clouds. Cities sparkled on the night side like scattered jewels. These humans are remarkable, Veltak explained. In all our studies of violent species, we have never seen anything quite like them. They appear to be naturally afraid of fighting. The images changed to show humans in strange uniforms helping wounded creatures that looked nothing like them. Other pictures displayed large buildings with red crosses painted on their roofs. Look at this evidence, Veltak continued. They build hospitals for their enemies during wars. They create detailed rules about how fighting should be conducted. They have something called the Geneva Convention that forbids attacking medical personnel or civilians. Representative Gorthon, a massive creature covered in thick gray hide, rumbled his confusion. Why would any species limit how they fight? That makes no sense. Because they fear violence itself, Veltak replied confidently. Study their literature. Their stories warn against war. Their greatest leaders are remembered for making peace, not winning battles. They even have special courts to punish their own people for fighting too harshly. More images flashed overhead. Humans placing flowers on stone monuments. Humans sitting around tables talking instead of fighting. Humans holding up signs that read, "No more war" and "Peace now." They have created something called the United Nations, Veltak explained. An organization designed specifically to prevent conflicts. When problems arise between their different groups, they talk and negotiate instead of attacking each other. Council member Zirian, whose snake-like body coiled around a floating platform, hissed thoughtfully. This is most unusual. In our experience, species that develop space travel are typically aggressive. How else would they survive long enough to reach the stars? That is exactly what makes humans so fascinating, Veltak answered. They have somehow evolved beyond their violent nature. Their entire civilization seems built around avoiding conflict. Even their entertainment often focuses on the tragedy and waste of war. The crystal being gestured toward another set of images showing human soldiers removing their helmets and bowing their heads in silence. They hold ceremonies to remember those who died in battles. But these ceremonies are sad, not celebratory. They treat war deaths as losses to mourn, not victories to celebrate. Perhaps they are simply weak, suggested Vortak, a creature that looked like an oversized insect with razor-sharp claws. Many prey species develop pacifist tendencies. No, that is not it. Veltak shook his head, sending sparkles of light dancing across the dome. Their technology is advanced. Their ships are well-designed. They clearly have the capability for violence. They simply choose not to use it. This makes them perfect for a very special role. The ambassador paused dramatically, letting the suspense build in the chamber. I propose that we invite humanity to serve as the galaxy's official peacekeepers. Not warriors, but mediators. Their natural aversion to conflict makes them ideal for resolving disputes between other species. Excited chatter erupted throughout the hall. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. Every galactic civilization had conflicts with their neighbors. Trade disputes, boundary disagreements, resource conflicts. These problems happen constantly. But finding neutral parties to mediate these disputes was always difficult. Most species had their own agendas and prejudices. Think about it, Veltak continued. Humans fear violence so much that they will work hard to prevent it. They have no territorial ambitions, since they only recently developed space travel. They have already proven their ability to create peaceful solutions among their own kind. THYSS flickered brightly with approval. It is perfect, a species of natural diplomats. We could establish peace stations throughout disputed regions, added Zirian. Humans could live there safely while mediating conflicts between more aggressive species. The vote was swift and unanimous. Every representative raised their hand, tentacle, claw, or appendage in agreement. Humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community as the official peacekeeping species. None of them realized how terribly wrong they were about human nature. The message was sent that same day, transmitted across space toward the small blue planet where humanity waited, unaware that their reputation as cosmic pacifists was about to be tested in ways they never expected. The communication screen flickered to life on the bridge of the human starship Aurora. Captain Lee Hyun straightened in his chair as strange symbols danced across the display, followed by a computerized voice speaking in perfect Korean. Greetings, peaceful humans of Earth. The voice began in a tone that sounded oddly like someone talking to small children. We are the Galactic Council, representatives of 47 species across this region of space. Commander Park Sue looked up from her station, eyebrows raised. Did they just call us peaceful humans? Sure. Hyun gestured for quiet as the message continued. We have studied your species with great interest and admiration. Your natural fear of violence and conflict makes you unique among star-traveling civilizations. We understand how difficult it must be for your people to live with such sensitivity to aggression. Lieutenant Kim Jae snorted softly from his position at the weapons console. Several other crew members exchanged puzzled glances. The alien voice continued with growing enthusiasm. We wish to offer your species a great honor. You are invited to serve as official mediators for galactic disputes. This role will allow you to help maintain peace throughout the stars, while keeping you safe from any dangerous situations. Safe from dangerous situations? Sue whispered. What do they think we are, scared children? We have prepared comfortable stations in neutral space where your people can live and work without fear, the message went on. You will have the finest diplomatic facilities, complete protection from any military activities, and the gratitude of peaceful species everywhere. Captain Hyun rubbed his forehead as the transmission ended. Communications sent a response. Tell them we accept their invitation to meet and discuss this opportunity. 3 weeks later, the human diplomatic ship approached Nexus Prime. The massive space station looked like a crystal flower blooming in the darkness, its petals made of transparent metal that sparkled with inner light. Director Choi Min led the human delegation through corridors filled with the strangest beings they had ever seen. Creatures made of living light floated past them. Others walked on dozens of tiny legs, or moved by rolling like giant wheels. The humans tried not to stare, but everything was so different from Earth. Ambassador Veltak waited for them in a circular room with walls that showed images of peaceful planets and calm starscapes. The crystal being's body threw rainbows across the floor as he moved. Welcome, gentle humans, Veltak said warmly. Please, sit wherever you feel most comfortable. We want you to feel completely at ease. The humans took their seats around a curved table. General Oh-sung remained standing near the back of the group, his weathered face showing no expression. We are honored by your invitation. Director Choi began carefully. However, we have some questions about your understanding of our species. Of course, Veltak nodded, his voice kind and patient. We know this must be overwhelming for such a naturally peaceful people. Please, ask anything you wish. You mentioned that we fear violence. Choi continued. We're curious about how you reached that conclusion. Veltak brightened with excitement. Oh, the evidence is overwhelming. Your species has created the most elaborate rules for warfare we have ever seen. The Geneva Convention rules of engagement, military tribunals. Clearly these exist because your people are deeply traumatized by conflict. Captain Hyun leaned forward. Or perhaps they exist for other reasons? Please, No need to be modest. Veltak waved a crystalline hand dismissively. Your monuments to fallen soldiers are clearly expressions of grief and regret about violence. Your literature warns against the horrors of war. Even your entertainment focuses on peace and cooperation rather than conquest. Lieutenant Colonel Yunei, sitting next to General O, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her uniform bore ribbons from 3 different peacekeeping missions where she had seen real combat. Ambassador, Director Choi tried again. I think there may be some misinterpretation of our cultural practices. Not at all, Veltak said gently. We understand perfectly. Many species go through a phase where they try to deny their true nature. Your people have evolved beyond the need for violence, and that is something to celebrate, not hide. The crystal being moved to a wall display, showing images of human activities. Look at these pictures from your planet. Humans holding peace rallies, creating international laws, building organizations designed to prevent conflict. This is a behavior of a species that instinctively understands the terrible cost of aggression. You see our efforts to control violence as evidence that we fear it? Asked Captain Hyun. Exactly, Veltak beamed. And that makes you perfect for mediation work. You will be stationed safely away from any actual fighting, in peaceful environments where you can help other species resolve their differences through discussion rather than battle. General O finally spoke from his position near the wall. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly across the room. Ambassador, how many wars has your species fought? Veltak paused, his crystalline form dimming slightly. Wars? The Galactic Council exists to prevent such primitive behavior. Civilized species negotiate their differences. And if negotiation fails? O asked, It does not fail among civilized beings. Veltak replied firmly. Violence is the resort of undeveloped minds. Surely you understand this better than anyone. The humans exchanged looks around the table. Captain Hyun could see the growing realization in his colleague's eyes. These aliens had completely misunderstood human nature. They had seen humanity's careful regulation of warfare and mistaken it for weakness. They had observed human efforts to build peace and assumed it came from fear rather than wisdom. We appreciate your confidence in our abilities, Director Choi said diplomatically. Perhaps we could discuss the specific duties you have in mind. As Veltak began explaining the comfortable, safe stations where humans would work as mediators, General O caught Captain Hyun's eye. The old soldier's expression said everything without words. The galaxy had no idea what humans were really capable of. The attack came like lightning in the darkness of space. War Premier Gaxon stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching to the massive view screen as his war fleet unleashed destruction upon the peaceful Kalani system. Bright flashes of plasma fire lit up the black void as orbital stations exploded into glowing fragments. Target their evacuation ships, Gaxon commanded, his scarred face twisted with cruel satisfaction. The Skalmar leader was twice the size of a human, with thick gray skin and tusks that jutted from his lower jaw like broken swords. Sir, those are civilian vessels. His weapons officer reported nervously. I know exactly what they are, Gaxon snarled. Fire. Below on the planet's surface. Cities burned. The Skalmar had chosen their targets carefully. Hospitals marked with medical symbols, schools filled with younglings, and refugee centers where families had gathered for safety. This was not conquest. This was terror. Across the galaxy, emergency signals screamed through communication networks. The peaceful species of the Galactic Council watched in horror as their sensors showed the complete destruction of 3 inhabited worlds. In the emergency meeting chamber on Nexus Prime, panic filled the air like smoke. Ambassador Veltak's crystalline form flickered rapidly with distress as reports poured in from the attack zone. Casualties are in the millions, reported Admiral Vextol, his tentacles trembling as he read from his data pad. The Skalmar specifically targeted civilian areas. Medical facilities, schools, evacuation centers, nothing was spared. Council member THYSS blazed with angry light. How is this possible? We have treaties, agreements, civilized protocols. The Skalmar never signed those treaties, Admiral Vextol replied grimly. They come from the Outer Rim, beyond our usual contact zones. Their message was clear. submit to their demands, or watch more worlds burn. Representative Zorthak's insect-like mandibles clicked nervously. What are their demands? Complete surrender of all 3 systems. Veltak read from the transmission, plus tribute payments from every council species. They want food, resources, technology, everything we have worked to build together. Our defense fleets? Asked Zirian, his snake-like body coiled tight with tension. Scattered across 50 systems, Admiral Vextull admitted, most of our ships are exploration vessels with light weapons. The Skalmar brought full war cruisers, ships built for destruction, not discovery. The chamber erupted in frightened voices, speaking dozens of different languages. Some representatives called for immediate surrender. Others demanded hopeless last stands. All of them seemed lost and afraid. Ambassador Veltak suddenly brightened with desperate hope. The humans, they can negotiate with the Skalmar. Surely even these barbarians will listen to reason from such naturally peaceful mediators. All eyes turned to Director Choi Min, who sat with a small human delegation in their assigned seats. The Korean woman's face had gone very pale as she read the attack reports on her data pad. You must contact them immediately, Veltak pleaded. Arrange talks, find common ground, offer reasonable compromises. This is exactly why we invited your species to join us. Director Choi looked up from her pad, and something in her eyes made several nearby representatives step back. Ambassador, did you read the casualty reports carefully? Of course, but negotiations can still dash. They bombed a children's hospital, Choi said quietly. Her voice was steady, but those who knew humans could hear the ice beneath her words. They targeted evacuation ships filled with families trying to escape. They murdered medical personnel who were treating wounded civilians. Captain Hyun rose slowly from his seat. You want us to negotiate with creatures who deliberately target children? Surely you can find some way to dash, Veltak began. No. The word cut through the chamber's chaos like a blade. Every conversation stopped. Every being turned to stare at the humans. I'm sorry, Veltak stammered. I said no, Captain Hyun repeated, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. We have seen this before, Ambassador. We know what the Skalmar are. General Oh-sung stepped forward from where he had been standing against the wall. Despite his age, he moved with the precise steps of a career soldier. Ambassador Veltak, you have made a fundamental error about my species. I don't understand. The crystal being flickered with confusion. Director Choi stood, her diplomatic smile replaced by something much harder. You think we avoid conflict because we are afraid. You believe our rules of war show weakness. You assume our desire for peace comes from cowardice. Is it not? Veltak asked desperately. General O's weathered face showed no emotion, but his voice carried the weight of a lifetime spent in service. We do not fear war, Ambassador. We fear what we become when we are forced to wage it. But sometimes there is no choice. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. This was not what they expected from their peaceful mediators. The Skalmar have made their position clear. Captain Hyun continued. They do not want negotiation. They want submission. They have chosen to make war on the innocent, to target those who cannot fight back. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Ae stepped forward, her hand resting unconsciously on her sidearm. In human history, we have a name for such creatures. We call them war criminals. But your peaceful nature, Veltak protested weakly, was never cowardice, General O said quietly. It was discipline. It was the choice to be better than our worst impulses. But when civilization itself is threatened, when negotiation becomes impossible, when innocent people cry out for protection. He paused, looking around the chamber at the frightened faces of dozens of species. Then you discover what humans are really capable of. The Galactic Council was about to learn that their greatest mistake was believing that restraint meant weakness. They were about to see what happened when humanity's discipline finally broke. The Skalmar sensor operator stared at his display screen, blinking his 4 yellow eyes in disbelief. War Premier, we have contact approaching the Kalani system. War Premier Gaxon turned from watching the burning planet below. How many enemy vessels? 12 ships, sir. Small formation. Gaxon's tusks gleamed as he smiled cruelly. 12? The coward sent us a token surrender fleet. He activated his communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. Unknown vessels. This is War Premier Gaxon of the Skalmar Horde. You are outnumbered 50 to 1. Land on the planet below, and we will allow you to gather the remaining survivors before we finish them. The response came back in calm, measured tones that seemed strangely cold for such a peaceful species. Skalmar Fleet, this is Commander Park Sue of the Human Defense Force. You have committed acts of war against civilian populations. Withdraw from the system immediately. The entire Skalmar command deck erupted in harsh laughter. Through their view screens, they could see the approaching human ships, sleek white vessels barely a quarter the size of Skalmar destroyers. The humans appear to be bringing exploration ships to a battle. Defense Force. Gaxon roared with amusement. What will you defend us from? Harsh words and peace treaties. He gestured to his weapons officer. Show these weak creatures what real warriors look like. Begin the attack. What happened next will be studied in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The human ships did not charge forward like brave fools seeking glorious death. Instead, they scattered into perfect geometric patterns, moving with precision that seemed almost mechanical. As the massive Skalmar warships lumbered toward them, the human vessels danced between the enemy fleet like birds avoiding slow-moving predators. They're targeting our communication arrays, reported the Skalmar tactical officer, confusion clear in his voice. So what? Destroy them. Gaxon snarled. But the humans proved impossible to pin down. Every time Skalmar gunners locked onto a target, it slipped away at the last moment. The human ships moved as if they shared a single mind, covering each other's movements and supporting damaged vessels with practiced ease. Commander Park Sue's voice remained steady as she coordinated the battle from her ship's bridge. Jinwoo, disable their port engines only. We want prisoners for exchange later. Hygiene, target their weapon systems but avoid their life support. This was not the panic confusion the Skalmar expected from a desperate last stand. The humans fought with cold calculation, their voices calm even as plasma fire lit up the darkness around them. They seemed to become more focused as the battle intensified, not less. Sir, they're not trying to destroy our ships, the Skalmar weapons officer reported. They're disabling specific systems. Gaxon watched in growing bewilderment as human fighters swarmed around his flagship. Their weapons cut through his ship's armor with surgical precision, taking out engines, communications, and weapons while carefully avoiding crew quarters and life support systems. Why are they keeping us alive? He demanded. His question was answered when the first human boarding pods attached to his ship's hull. The Skalmar warriors inside prepared for a glorious final battle, expecting the humans to come charging in with wild desperation. Instead, Lieutenant Yoon A led her squad to the corridors with methodical efficiency. They moved like a machine designed for warfare, each soldier covering specific angles while their teammates advanced. When they encountered Skalmar defenders, they used precise, stunning weapons instead of deadly plasma rifles. Surrender, and you will be treated according to interstellar law. Yoon A announced in perfect Skalmar language as her team surrounded a group of enemy soldiers. We do not surrender to cowards, snarled the Skalmar warrior, raising his weapon. The human response was swift and professional. The warrior found himself stunned and secure before he could fire a shot. His companions, seeing the futility of resistance against such organized opponents, slowly lowered their own weapons. What shocked the Skalmar prisoners most was what happened next. The humans provided immediate medical attention to wounded enemies. They shared their emergency food supplies with hungry captives. They treated injured Skalmar with the same care they gave their own wounded. War Premier Gaxon, blood streaming from a head wound, found himself face to face with a human medic barely half his size. He expected torture, execution, or at least imprisonment in terrible conditions. Instead, the medic handed him medical supplies and asked in heavily accented Skalmar, "Where you're most seriously wounded, our doctors can help them." "Why?" Gaxon growled, genuinely confused. "We are your enemies. We killed your people." The young medic looked tired beyond his years. "Because that's what we do. That's who we are." Within 6 hours, the human fleet had disabled or captured most of the Skalmar attack force. Their tactics had been studied, their formations analyzed, and their weaknesses exploited with devastating effectiveness. But the humans took no pleasure in their victory. They worked with grim determination to save lives and provide aid to everyone, friend and enemy alike. When Skalmar reinforcements arrived the next day, they expected to find their advanced fleet celebrating an easy conquest. Instead, they discovered their forces defeated by an enemy that seemed to fight with the efficiency of machines but the mercy of saints. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, not because they were cruel, but because they were not. The Skalmar reinforcement fleet arrived at the Kalani system expecting to find their comrades celebrating an easy victory. Instead, they discovered something that would haunt their species for generations. Their mighty war fleet floated powerless in space, disabled but not destroyed. Skalmar warriors who should have been conquering worlds were instead receiving medical treatment from the very humans they had tried to kill. Most shocking of all, many of the rescued civilians were speaking with wonder about the strange pale beings who had saved them. "They gave us their own food," whispered an elderly Kalani survivor to the rescue ships. "Their soldiers carried our wounded to safety, even while the battle still raged around us." "The humans wept," reported another civilian, her voice filled with awe. "I saw them weeping as they pulled bodies from the wreckage. They cried for people they had never met, from worlds they had never seen." Fleet Commander Thaxon, leading the Skalmar reinforcements, stared at the tactical displays in confusion. His sensors showed human ships patrolling the system, but they were not behaving like conquerors. Instead, they were coordinating rescue operations and providing aid to anyone who needed it. "Surrender immediately," came the transmission from Admiral Hyun's flagship. The human's voice was firm but not cruel. "Your advanced fleet chose to target civilians. We will not allow that to continue. You dare make demands of the Skalmar horde?" Thaxon roared back. "We make no demands," Admiral Hyun replied calmly. "We simply state facts. You may surrender and receive fair treatment, or you may continue fighting and be defeated. The choice is yours." Thaxon chose to fight. It was the worst mistake of his military career. The second battle lasted less than 3 hours. The human fleet had spent the previous days studying every aspect of Skalmar tactics, weapons, and ship design. They knew exactly how their enemies would move, where they would strike, and how they would try to escape. The Skalmar found themselves facing an opponent who seemed to predict their every action. But what truly broke Skalmar morale was not the military defeat. It was a realization that even in victory, the humans showed no cruelty. Captured Skalmar officers were treated with respect. Wounded enemies received the same medical care as human soldiers. Prison facilities were clean and comfortable, with proper food and recreation. War Premier Gaxon, now a prisoner aboard a human medical ship, confronted his captors with growing confusion. "Why do you not torture us for information? Why do you heal our wounds instead of letting us die?" Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Ae, visiting the medical bay, sat down beside his bed. Her uniform showed the wear of recent combat, but her eyes were gentle. "Because that is not who we are," she said simply. "But we are your enemies," Gaxon protested. "We killed your people. We targeted your civilians." "Yes," Yoon Ae agreed, "and that was wrong. But becoming like you would not make it right." The Skalmar leader stared at her in silence for a long moment. In his culture, strength meant dominance, victory meant humiliation of the defeated, and mercy was seen as weakness. These humans made no sense to him. Within weeks, the story spread throughout Skalmar space. Their mighty horde, terror of the Outer Rim, had been defeated not by superior numbers or advanced weapons, but by superior tactics and discipline. More importantly, their defeat had been accompanied by mercy they had never shown to their own victims. Young Skalmar warriors began to question their leaders. If the humans could show such strength while maintaining their principles, what did that say about the Horde's methods? Rebellion started in the outer colonies and spread inward like wildfire. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council gathered to hear the full report of humanity's first military action. Ambassador Veltak's crystalline form seemed dimmer than usual as he listened to Admiral Hyun's calm recitation of events. "We regret the loss of life," Hyun concluded, "but the Skalmar threat has been neutralized. Their remaining forces are withdrawing to their home territories." "How?" whispered Council Member THYSS, her light flickering with confusion. "How did you do what our combined fleets could not?" Director Choi Min stood slowly, her diplomatic composure intact despite the recent crisis. "We did what humans have always done, Ambassador. We fought when fighting was necessary, but we never forgot who we are." General O stepped forward, his weathered face showing the strain of recent events. "You thought our rules of war made us weak. You did not understand that those rules are what make us strong. Any species can destroy. It takes wisdom to know when to show mercy. Every human child learns about warfare," added Captain Kim Jae, newly promoted after his actions at Kalani. "Not because we love it, but because we must understand its true cost. We study history not to glorify battle, but to learn from its tragedies." Ambassador Veltak's voice was barely a whisper. "We misunderstood everything about your species." "Yes," Director Choi agreed, "but understanding can grow from mistakes. That is what makes civilization possible." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled representatives. Humanity had not defeated the Skalmar through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won through superior discipline, better tactics, and the moral strength to remain civilized even in the face of barbarism. From that day forward, the galaxy understood a new truth. Humans did not fear war because they were weak. They feared it because they understood its true cost. They chose peace not from cowardice, but from wisdom. And when peace failed, they could wage war with devastating efficiency while never losing sight of their humanity. The universe had found its guardians at last.